There is a particular kind of theft that leaves no fingerprints, no broken locks, no shattered glass, and yet it can hollow out a person's confidence more completely than any visible crime. It happens in families, in marriages, in friendships, in workplaces, in creative partnerships, and in social circles where admiration is currency. It happens when one person works, struggles, grows, risks, and achieves, while another person quietly steps in to feed on the result. In the narcissistic dynamic, your success is rarely allowed to remain fully yours. It becomes a resource. It becomes supply. It becomes a mirror the narcissist stands in front of so they can avoid seeing the collapse underneath their own reflection. This is why the narcissist needs your success so desperately. It is not merely because they envy you. It is because your strength, your discipline, your credibility, your beauty, your talent, your healing, your promotions, your audience, your peace, your joy, and your milestones can temporarily prop up their failing internal structure. What looks like pride in you is often possession of you. What sounds like support is often strategic attachment. What appears to be closeness is frequently a parasite-host bond disguised as love, loyalty, mentorship, or family concern. To understand why a narcissist steals the meaning of your success, you have to understand the terrifying emptiness they spend their life trying to outrun. Beneath the image management, the entitlement, the arrogance, the grandiosity, the criticism, and the constant hunger for attention is a fractured sense of self that cannot self-regulate for long. A healthy person can take satisfaction in their own effort, tolerate failure, learn from rejection, celebrate someone else's achievement, and still feel fundamentally intact. A narcissistic person often cannot. Their identity is unstable because it is not rooted in reality. It is rooted in image. It is constructed through comparison, external validation, and dominance. Since their self-worth is not internally earned and integrated, it must be externally borrowed, extracted, or staged. That is why proximity to a gifted, hardworking, admired, or emotionally rich person becomes so valuable to them. They do not merely want to be around light. They want to stand in it and claim the glow as evidence of their own greatness. This is where the parasite-host dynamic becomes painfully clear. A parasite does not create life. It attaches itself to an existing source of life and siphons from it. In much the same way, the narcissist often does not build a real inner identity. They attach themselves to people who are building one. They gravitate toward those with promise, warmth, intelligence, talent, status, empathy, resilience, or momentum. They study those people. They mirror them, flatter them, love bomb them, mentor them, seduce them, recruit them, or attach themselves by role and title. Then, over time, the narcissist begins to convert the host's qualities into narcissistic fuel. Your promotion becomes proof that they inspired you. Your beauty becomes proof of their superior taste. Your intelligence becomes proof of their excellent judgment in choosing you. Your healing becomes proof that they were never the problem. Your achievements become woven into their narrative until the line between your labor and their identity is intentionally blurred. The theft is not always obvious in the beginning. Sometimes it starts as over-identification. They say things like, "We did it, I always knew you had it because of how I raised you, I saw this in you before anyone else did, you're where you are because I pushed you, people know you because of me, your success reflects this family, this marriage, this company, this partnership, this brand, this vision." On the surface these comments can sound affectionate, proud, even supportive. But the emotional aftertaste is different. There is something invasive in it. Something dislocating. Instead of feeling seen, you feel absorbed. Instead of being celebrated, you feel used. Instead of being recognized as separate and sovereign, you feel drafted into a story where your life exists to stabilize someone else's ego. That feeling is not imaginary. In a narcissistic structure, your autonomy is dangerous because it proves they are not central, not omnipotent, and not entitled to own what they did not create. Your independence is a threat to the fantasy system that keeps them from confronting their internal decay. If you succeed without them, you expose their irrelevance. If you thrive after their abuse, you expose their failure to define you. If you gain admiration they cannot control, you become living evidence that value exists outside their possession. Because of this, the narcissist lives in a contradiction. They need your success, but they also resent it. They want to be associated with your shine, but they also cannot tolerate you becoming brighter than the role they assigned you. That is why they often oscillate between praising you and undermining you, showcasing you and sabotaging you, bragging about you publicly while devaluing you privately. The goal is not your flourishing. The goal is calibrated access to your radiance without allowing you enough freedom to realize it was always yours. Many survivors describe a confusing pattern in which the narcissist seemed highly invested in their potential at first. A parent pushed them toward excellence, a spouse encouraged a business venture, a friend championed their creativity, a boss promoted their visibility, a mentor opened doors. But once the survivor's success became real enough to create independence, respect, or separate recognition, the atmosphere changed. Praise turned conditional. Support came with strings. There were strange digs, withheld affection, dismissive jokes, passive-aggressive comments, sudden crises, accusations of selfishness, or escalating demands for gratitude. This shift happens because the narcissist does not want your success in a way that liberates you. They want your success in a way that feeds them. They are comfortable with your rise only when they can position themselves as owner, architect, gatekeeper, or superior witness to it. Once your success begins to generate its own gravity, it threatens to pull you out of their orbit, and that is when the extraction becomes more aggressive. The narcissist's need to steal reflected glory is rooted in a profound inability to generate stable self-esteem from within. Genuine self-esteem comes from reality-based living. It comes from effort, honesty, self-confrontation, empathy, accountability, and integration of both strengths and limitations. It can survive imperfection because it is built on substance. Narcissistic self-esteem is different. It is brittle, inflated, and dependent on constant reinforcement. It cannot tolerate reality for long because reality exposes the gap between image and truth. So the narcissist looks for shortcuts. Association with successful people is one of the most efficient shortcuts available. If they can attach to someone radiant, they can bypass the exhausting labor of becoming real. Instead of cultivating depth, they cultivate access. Instead of building character, they build optics. Instead of developing competence, they develop claims. Instead of doing the hard inner work, they feed on the visible fruits of someone else's inner work. This is why narcissists are often drawn to empaths, achievers, creatives, healers, leaders, and highly conscientious people. Such people are rich in what the narcissist lacks. They possess emotional depth, moral energy, imagination, perseverance, and the capacity to create meaning. They are often generous by nature, willing to share, willing to uplift, willing to include. In a healthy bond, those traits create mutuality. In a narcissistic bond, those same traits become exploitable assets. The empath explains, forgives, and overextends. The achiever keeps proving their worth. The creative generates beauty and ideas. The healer restores emotional balance. The leader brings credibility and direction. The conscientious person keeps the system functioning. The narcissist consumes all of it and then works to rewrite the story so that the host's contribution becomes secondary to the narcissist's influence, needs, image, or authority. One of the most disorienting forms of this theft is merit appropriation. The narcissist does not always steal your achievement by literally taking credit in explicit terms. Often they steal it psychologically first. They reframe your effort as a reaction to them. If you succeed, it is because they motivated you, challenged you, supported you, sacrificed for you, introduced you, trained you, tolerated you, inspired you, believed in you, or corrected you. If they cannot position themselves as the cause of your success, they will try to position themselves as the context without which your success would have been impossible. This allows them to feed on your accomplishment while preserving the illusion that they are the central figure in every meaningful event around them. In extreme cases, they may openly tell others that your work was their idea, your breakthrough came from their advice, your style came from their influence, your network exists because of their connections, or your opportunity happened only because they allowed it. What makes this dynamic so psychologically devastating is that it attacks the survivor's sense of authorship. Human beings need to feel that their life belongs to them, that their choices matter, that their effort has meaning, that their growth is real, and that their achievements can be integrated into a coherent identity. When a narcissist repeatedly inserts themselves into your story as owner of your shine, they interfere with that integration. You may find yourself doubting your own memory, minimizing your own contribution, or feeling strange guilt when you experience pride. You may even feel disloyal for wanting your success to belong solely to you. That guilt is often conditioned. It was trained into you by someone who depended on your light but feared your separation. The narcissist's internal decay is rarely visible to outsiders in a straightforward way because they are often highly invested in performance. They may appear confident, charismatic, accomplished, generous, connected, insightful, or sophisticated. But inner decay reveals itself through pattern rather than presentation. It shows in chronic envy, inability to celebrate others without self-reference, compulsive comparison, lack of accountability, exploitative relationships, emotional shallowness, vindictiveness when admiration shifts away from them, and a relentless need to control narratives. Their sense of self is dying not necessarily in the dramatic sense of collapse at every moment, but in the sense that it lacks organic vitality. It is not self-renewing. It cannot metabolize shame in a healthy way. It cannot grow through humility. It cannot remain alive without supply. So it feeds. It feeds on attention, on status, on pity, on chaos, on sexuality, on conflict, on obedience, and, crucially, on reflected glory. Your success becomes oxygen in this system because it offers multiple forms of nourishment at once. It gives the narcissist bragging rights. It gives them proximity to admiration. It gives them a shield against criticism. It gives them evidence for their fantasy of superiority. It gives them leverage over you through guilt and obligation. It gives them a way to regulate their envy by converting what threatens them into something they can claim. It gives them social credibility, especially if they can say they discovered you, raised you, partnered with you, or shaped you. Even your pain can be converted into their image management. If you struggle after their abuse, they may present themselves as worried, generous, patient, misunderstood, or victimized. If you thrive, they may present themselves as the reason. Either way, your existence is treated as raw material for their self-maintenance. This is one reason survivors often say they felt less like a person and more like a function in the narcissist's life. They were there to admire, to absorb blame, to regulate mood, to generate status, to offer beauty, to create resources, to raise children, to perform emotional labor, to make the narcissist look good, or to give the narcissist someone to compete with and dominate. In such a system, your humanity is inconvenient because humanity is separate, complex, and sovereign. A narcissist who relies on you for reflected identity cannot fully tolerate your separateness. They may idealize your gifts but devalue your boundaries. They may crave your success but punish your self-possession. They may want you luminous, but only in a way that keeps them silhouetted at the center. It is important to understand that not all pride, influence, or association is narcissistic. Healthy relationships naturally include shared joy and mutual impact. Loving parents do shape children. Partners do support each other. Mentors do help. Friends do open doors. Communities do contribute to success. The difference lies in respect for authorship, autonomy, and reciprocity. A healthy person can say "I'm so proud of you" without converting your achievement into their identity. They can celebrate your growth without demanding ownership of it. They can influence you and still honor that you did the work. They do not need your brilliance to erase their emptiness. The narcissist does. This distinction matters because survivors are often manipulated into dismissing their discomfort as selfishness. They are told they are ungrateful, arrogant, dramatic, cold, disloyal, or obsessed with getting credit. But wanting your labor, your healing, your creativity, and your milestones to belong to you is not arrogance. It is psychological integrity. It is the restoration of authorship after prolonged identity theft. The narcissistic person frames your desire for ownership as a moral defect because your clarity threatens their access. Once you name the theft, the spell weakens. Once you stop handing over symbolic ownership of your life, the tether begins to fray. There is often a family system dimension to this dynamic that is especially difficult to untangle. In narcissistic families, children are frequently assigned roles that serve the parent's ego regulation. The golden child may be showcased as a trophy extension of the parent, while the scapegoat carries the family's shame and absorbs blame. The gifted child's achievements may become the parent's favorite storytelling material, not because the child is truly seen, but because the child's success polishes the parent's image. A narcissistic mother may boast endlessly about her daughter's beauty or accomplishments while privately attacking her independence. A narcissistic father may push his son toward visible success and then react with jealousy when the son surpasses him. The child grows up confused, associating excellence with exploitation and love with enmeshment. Success becomes dangerous because it triggers appropriation, competition, and control. Romantic relationships with narcissistic partners follow a similarly destabilizing pattern. In the love bombing stage, the narcissistic partner may seem enthralled by your gifts. They say you are extraordinary, brilliant, different from anyone they have ever known. They may encourage your dreams, speak of power couple futures, and present themselves as your biggest fan. But this admiration is often conditional on control. Once attachment is secured, the same qualities that attracted them begin to trigger envy and insecurity. If your career grows, if your beauty draws attention, if your emotional intelligence exposes their immaturity, if your recovery makes you less dependent, they may react by diminishing you, creating conflict before important moments, withholding support, triangulating you with others, or claiming that your success is making you selfish or disloyal. At the same time, they still want access to the status your success provides. They want to say they are with you, behind you, part of you, responsible for you. This is the double bind that exhausts so many survivors: shine, but not too brightly, succeed, but stay small enough to be owned. In friendships and professional environments, the pattern can be more subtle but no less corrosive. A narcissistic friend may celebrate your wins publicly while privately fishing for details to copy, undermine, or outperform. They may use your ideas, your introductions, your taste, your audience, or your vulnerability as social capital. A narcissistic boss may showcase your work to elevate the team or brand while obscuring your contribution and centering themselves in recognition. A narcissistic collaborator may attach themselves to your competence, then gradually rewrite the narrative so they appear to be the visionary while you become labor in the background. These dynamics can be especially hard to identify because ambition and branding culture often normalize self-promotion. The clue is not visibility alone. It is extraction without true acknowledgement, proximity without reciprocity, and chronic discomfort around your authorship. Why does your success provoke such intensity in the narcissist? Because success symbolizes what they cannot sustainably manufacture inside themselves: worth. Real success, even when modest, often grows out of internal alignment. It reflects patience, discipline, courage, adaptation, vision, sincerity, or resilience. It points back to a self that can labor in reality and become more real through that labor. The narcissist may imitate the outer signs of this process, but the internal continuity is missing. That is why someone else's authentic achievement is both alluring and unbearable. It exposes the exact terrain they avoid. They see in your progress the evidence that growth is possible through truth, not illusion. But instead of letting that realization humble and transform them, they often convert it into envy and appropriation. If they can absorb your success into their identity, they can momentarily escape the humiliation of not being what they pretend to be. Envy is central here. Narcissistic envy is not ordinary admiration mixed with longing. It is often annihilating in tone. It cannot easily tolerate the independent existence of goodness in another person. If someone else is radiant, talented, loved, respected, or free, the narcissist may experience that not simply as an observation but as an injury. Your goodness feels like evidence of their deficiency. Your joy feels like exclusion. Your recognition feels like theft from the attention they believe they deserve. Because they cannot regulate this shame-laced envy maturely, they seek ways to reduce the threat. They may devalue your achievement, find flaws in it, predict your downfall, spread doubt, create drama to distract from your moment, or claim partial ownership so that your success no longer stands as proof of your separateness. Appropriation is one of envy's most sophisticated disguises. This is why so many survivors say their biggest milestones were accompanied by strange emotional turbulence rather than uncomplicated celebration. Graduation, marriage, pregnancy, sobriety, healing, creative launches, promotions, awards, public recognition, and personal breakthroughs often triggered bizarre behavior from the narcissist. There might be sudden illness, emotional meltdowns, criticism over minor details, fights before important events, refusal to show up, inappropriate jokes, attention-seeking antics, or conversations that somehow shifted the spotlight back to them. If they could not stop your milestone, they would contaminate it. If they could not contaminate it, they would harvest it. If they could not harvest it, they might later rewrite it. The consistent theme is that your moment was never allowed to remain fully yours in their psychological world. For survivors, one of the deepest wounds is the collapse of trust in their own perception. Narcissistic appropriation often happens through cumulative microdistortions. You are praised, but with hooks. Supported, but with receipts. Admired, but with rivalry. Seen, but only through the narcissist's lens. Over time, you may struggle to identify why you feel depleted around someone who claims to be proud of you. You may second-guess whether you are too sensitive. But the body often knows before the mind does. There is a felt sense of being consumed. After sharing good news, you may feel drained rather than held. After a conversation about your achievement, you may feel smaller rather than affirmed. After being publicly celebrated by them, you may feel privately erased. These somatic clues matter. The nervous system often detects exploitation before language catches up. Healing begins with naming the mechanism clearly. The narcissist needs your success because your success functions as borrowed identity, emotional oxygen, status cover, and envy management. They are not simply proud of you. They are using you. This does not mean every narcissistic person is conscious of every layer of the process. Some are highly deliberate. Others operate through entrenched defenses and compulsions they would never articulate honestly. But the effect on the survivor is real regardless of the narcissist's level of awareness. Your light was treated as a utility rather than as an expression of your sovereign self. Reclaiming that light requires more than intellectual insight. It requires a restructuring of permission. Many survivors still carry an internalized observer who asks, "What will they think? How will they spin this? Do I owe them credit? Am I allowed to outgrow them? Am I betraying them by thriving? Should I minimize this so they do not react? Should I keep this private to avoid sabotage? Should I thank them even for harm because admitting the harm would make me feel cruel?" These questions reveal how deeply the psychological tether can remain even after physical distance is established. The narcissist may no longer be in the room, but their claim on your authorship may still live in your nervous system. Severing that tether involves repeated acts of truth. I did this work. My healing belongs to me. My creativity is mine. My future does not require their permission. Their envy is not my burden. Their emptiness is not my responsibility. Their narrative is not my identity. One practical aspect of reclaiming your light is becoming far more discerning about access. Not everyone deserves front-row seats to your becoming. Survivors often feel compelled to share milestones with people who historically misused them because they still hope for the missing experience of true celebration. They want the parent to finally be proud in a healthy way, the partner to finally be supportive without competition, the friend to finally be happy without imitation or sabotage. This hope is understandable, but it can keep reopening the wound. Boundaries are not punishment. They are protection of authorship. You do not have to offer your good news to someone who turns your joy into a feeding ground. You do not have to narrate your progress to the person who taught you that your light was public property. Another vital step is reclaiming accurate language around contribution. Survivors sometimes overcredit the narcissist because they were trained to do so. Yes, perhaps the narcissistic parent paid for school, but maybe they also weaponized that support and harmed your sense of self. Yes, perhaps the narcissistic partner encouraged your business idea, but maybe they also drained your energy, destabilized your focus, and took credit for your labor. Yes, perhaps the narcissistic boss opened a door, but maybe you were the one who walked through it, delivered results, and carried the weight. Reality-based thinking is not ingratitude. It is the refusal to let coercive generosity become ownership. Healthy influence does not require self-erasure in return. The process of severing reflected glory dynamics often reveals grief. This grief can be profound because you are not only grieving mistreatment. You are grieving the fact that your brightest moments were not held safely by people who claim to love you. You are grieving birthdays contaminated by jealousy, graduations overshadowed by drama, relationships invaded by possessiveness, promotions turned into lectures about gratitude, and healing milestones treated as commentary on the narcissist rather than as liberation for you. You are grieving the simple human experience of being delighted in without being consumed. That grief deserves room. It is not weakness. It is part of recovering the emotional truth of what was taken. At the same time, there is immense power in recognizing that the very qualities the narcissist fed on are evidence of your life force. They attached to your success because there was something real there. They sought your light because it was generative, not synthetic. They wanted your reflected glory because your glory came from substance. This does not romanticize the abuse. It contextualizes it. Their hunger was diagnostic. It pointed to what was alive in you. The danger is that survivors sometimes misinterpret being targeted as proof of specialness in a way that keeps them susceptible to future narcissistic dynamics. A better understanding is this: your vitality was real, and exploitative people recognized it. Your task now is not to become dimmer so you can avoid predators. It is to become more discerning so your vitality is protected by boundaries, self-trust, and accurate perception. One of the clearest signs that you are healing is that your success starts to feel quieter and more intimate again. It no longer exists primarily as something to announce, defend, explain, or strategically frame around another person's reactions. It returns to being embodied. You feel it in your own chest first. You can hold pride without panic. You can enjoy progress without immediately scanning for envy. You can keep things private until they are rooted. You can celebrate with people who do not need to stand in your spotlight. You can achieve without hearing the old internal chorus demanding that you shrink, share ownership, or brace for punishment. This is not selfishness. It is freedom from parasitic mirroring. There is also a deeper psychological liberation that happens when you stop trying to prove anything to the narcissist. Many survivors remain unconsciously tethered through revenge success. They want to become so successful, so beautiful, so healed, so publicly validated that the narcissist will finally see what they lost or regret what they did. While this drive can generate momentum, it still leaves the narcissist at the center of your motivational field. Your light remains oriented around their gaze. True reclamation goes further. It says my life is no longer a courtroom where I present evidence for my worth. I do not need my success to be legible to the person who tried to consume it. I do not need the thief to acknowledge the theft in order to own what is mine. This shift can be terrifying because it requires giving up the fantasy of vindication through their recognition. But it is also the moment the tether truly weakens. When the narcissist can no longer feed on your need to be seen by them, they lose access to one of the subtlest forms of supply. Your success becomes less narratively available. It is no longer a message to them, a defense against them, or a resource for them. It becomes part of your life, integrated and self-owned. For some survivors, reclaiming their light involves reducing contact or going no contact altogether. For others, especially in family or work systems where full disengagement is not possible, it involves strategic opacity. You stop over-explaining. You stop volunteering details. You stop seeking approval in spaces structured around extraction. You become emotionally economical. You share selectively with trustworthy people and keep your inner process protected from those who historically weaponized it. This can feel unnatural at first, especially if you were trained to be transparent for someone else's convenience. But secrecy and privacy are not the same thing. Narcissists often accuse survivors of secrecy when what they are actually losing is access. It is equally important to rebuild your relationship with celebration. Because narcissistic dynamics contaminate success, many survivors develop strange ambivalence toward thriving. They procrastinate near breakthroughs, hide talents, downplay achievements, choose invisibility, or self-sabotage before important milestones. This is not laziness or lack of ambition. It is often trauma-linked self-protection. At some level, the body has learned that being radiant attracts extraction, envy, punishment, or possession. Healing this pattern requires gentle exposure to safe visibility. Celebrate in small ways with safe people. Mark milestones for yourself. Let achievement register in your body without rushing past it. Learn that success does not have to end in theft. A crucial part of SEO-friendly discussions about narcissistic abuse is resisting sensationalism while still telling the truth. The parasite host metaphor is powerful because it captures the energetic and psychological reality many survivors feel. But the metaphor is most useful when it leads to clarity rather than fear. The point is not that narcissists possess mystical power to drain you. The point is that repeated relational exploitation can train you to externalize your authorship and unconsciously organize your life around someone else's ego demands. Once you understand the mechanism, you can interrupt it. Once you stop volunteering your light into a system built to consume it, your energy can return to actual living. Your success was never their identity, even if they wore it like a stolen coat. Your brilliance was never proof of their greatness, even if they introduced it that way. Your healing was never an endorsement of their innocence, even if they used it to rewrite history. Your achievements were never communal property just because they were nearby when they happened. Presence is not ownership. Influence is not authorship. Access is not entitlement. These distinctions are revolutionary for survivors because narcissistic systems collapse them on purpose. It can help to think of reflected glory as a counterfeit form of belonging. Healthy belonging says I can love what is yours without needing to own it. I can stand beside your shine without standing inside it. I can be proud of you without erasing you. Narcissistic belonging says if you are mine, then what is yours should feed me. If I am close enough to your light, I deserve some of its legitimacy. If I helped in any way, however small, then your success should regulate my self-esteem. This counterfeit belonging is possessive, not relational. It does not honor difference. It colonizes it. The survivor's work is to replace counterfeit belonging with truthful belonging. Truthful belonging starts inside. I belong to myself. My life is not an annex of someone else's ego. My gifts are not bargaining chips for love. My milestones do not require surrender of authorship. My joy is not disrespect. My privacy is not betrayal. My boundaries are not cruelty. From there, truthful belonging extends outward toward people who can witness without consuming, support without controlling, admire without competing, and celebrate without stealing. Such relationships may feel unfamiliar at first because they are so non-invasive. There is room to breathe in them. Your success expands you instead of contracting you. Experts in trauma recovery often note that one of the most radical outcomes of healing is the restoration of subjectivity. You stop living as an object in someone else's psychological economy and start living as a subject with your own mind, desires, values, and narrative authority. This restoration can feel subtle at first. You notice that you no longer rehearse imaginary conversations in which you justify your choices to the narcissist. You no longer feel compelled to dilute good news before sharing it. You no longer hand over interpretive power about your life to someone committed to misunderstanding you. These are not small changes. They are signs that your self is coming back online. The narcissist may react strongly when this happens. If they sense they are losing access to reflected glory, they may intensify charm, guilt, rage, hoovering, triangulation, or public image management. They may suddenly become nostalgic, wounded, generous, spiritual, apologetic, or invested in family unity. Or they may smear you as arrogant, unstable, ungrateful, selfish, or influenced by others. None of this changes the underlying reality. A system that depended on siphoning your light will resist your recovery because your recovery exposes the system. Their reaction is not proof that you are wrong. It is often proof that the supply line is closing. Some survivors worry that seeing the narcissist this clearly will make them bitter or cynical. In reality, clarity is often what allows warmth to return. When you no longer waste energy trying to force healthy reciprocity out of exploitative dynamics, you have more emotional bandwidth for genuine connection. You become less available for manipulation not because your heart closes, but because your discernment opens. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy, access with love, admiration with safety, and pride with respect. Your success becomes less performative and more nourishing because it is no longer entangled with a predator's hunger. There is also an ethical dimension to reclaiming your light. When you stop allowing your merits to be appropriated, you model reality for others. Children see that achievements belong to the person who labored for them. Colleagues see what proper credit looks like. Friends experience what non-extractive celebration feels like. Communities benefit when truth replaces charisma-driven ownership. Narcissistic systems thrive in ambiguity, especially around contribution and authority. Clear attribution is therefore not just personally healing. It is culturally corrective. For anyone currently trapped in a reflected glory dynamic, it is worth saying plainly, you are not imagining the competition hidden inside the support, the theft hidden inside the praise, or the hunger hidden inside the closeness. If someone repeatedly attaches themselves to your accomplishments in ways that leave you feeling erased, indebted, diminished, or strangely contaminated, pay attention. If your biggest moments become their stories, if your milestones trigger their insecurity, if your growth is welcomed only when it remains under their authorship, you are likely dealing with more than ordinary relational complexity. You are dealing with a person whose sense of self feeds on what is alive in others. And yet, the final truth is not about them. It is about you. It is about the fact that what they fed on was never theirs to keep. They could mimic it, narrate it, display it, monetize it, leverage it, or weaponize it, but they could not become it. Borrowed light does not repair a dying self. Stolen identity does not create soul. Reflected glory cannot resurrect what has not been honestly built. This is why narcissists remain hungry. No matter how much brilliance they stand near, they cannot digest it into wholeness because wholeness requires truth, and truth is what their defenses are designed to avoid. Your task is not to cure their hunger. Your task is to stop mistaking your light for a public utility. Your success is not there to oxygenate someone else's internal collapse. Your gifts are not life support for a fragile ego that resents your separateness. Your milestones are not communal property for image management. They are chapters in your own unfolding. They belong in your hands, your body, your memory, your name. So reclaim the authorship. Reclaim the labor. Reclaim the pride. Reclaim the timeline. Reclaim the meaning. Let your success return from the distorted hall of mirrors where it was used as costume and camouflage. Let it become real again in the quiet place where effort meets identity. Let yourself know, perhaps for the first time without apology, that your light is yours. It was always yours. The theft may have delayed your recognition, but it did not transfer ownership. The tether can be cut. The reflected glory can be withdrawn. The oxygen line can close. And when it does, what remains is not emptiness but truth. You were never an extension of their dying self. You were the living source they could not create, only borrow from. Now the source returns to itself. In that return is the beginning of a different life, one in which success is no longer something you brace for but something you inhabit, one in which your brilliance is not evidence in someone else's fantasy but expression of your own integrated self, one in which the people around you do not feed on your radiance but warm their hands beside it with gratitude and respect. That life is possible. It begins the moment you stop asking who gets to claim your light and start answering, with calm conviction, I do.